Now, my father was born in Drumcharlie, and he was born on the 28th of January 1896. His mother was Margaret Littleton, and his father was Lawrence O Dea. Now, he was the eldest. They had a farm, and as his thing says here, they were very big into kind of the Land League and Moonlighters and all that kind of stuff. He got a job in Dublin from a man called Con McCormack. Now, it was nothing to my mother's McCormack kind of thing. And he got the job there. And that was in 26 Moore Street. He was a grocer's assistant. But they seemed to have had a pub. And the men also had a kind of, what he used to joke about this, that they had a kind of a betting office. And once the boss discovered that Dad was good at math, he was very intelligent kind of a man and very witted kind of thing. And he sent him, he put him into that department, I'd say, going out, collecting bets or whatever. Right. And Dad used to always joke that it probably was all illegal, but he didn't realise it at the time.
He was so young, wasn't he?
I mean, when you say he was 16. He went at 16 there.
So he just did whatever he was told, I suppose.
He had his bicycle and he knew Dublin backwards, I'd say myself, you know.
Do you know where he stayed when he went?
No, he stayed there, I would gather. No, he never said he stayed someplace else. He must have stayed overhead the pub and the
place, maybe, yeah.
I would imagine. But later on, when he was injured, joined the volunteers. He said when the volunteers were started at the end of 1913, he joined them. And I was intrigued by that getting his ammunition was so important. He gave great detail to that in his statement here, and that he had paid for the price of a rifle and he finally got the rifle. But I do remember him talking or telling us where he hid the rifle. And that's what makes me think that the building he stayed in had 2 stories, because he said the stairs of the building that you could kind of open something in it, and it was like a closet, and he put his rifle and all his ammunition and all his stuff. He had hidden that there. He even named the rifle. He got a Lee Enfield from the company, and he got a Hoth rifle and a .45 automatic. I remember him distinctly talking about that stairs, that you could open the stair and you could put the stuff in under it, and that's where he kept it. He talks in terms of the Easter Monday, that nothing had happened in the morning and they hadn't been given any directions, and that he went out to Hoth, which seems to have been part of the job. And then that he came back and he had his dinner, and it was during the dinner he remarks kind of thing that there were no trains or anything moving, and that it was all very kind of wondering what was happening, and that he got in his bicycle and he went, I suppose he brought all his ammunition with him, and that he went down and that he met the Lancers, wasn't it, coming back, and they had been repulsed at the GPO. And then he made his way down to the forecourts. Now, he seems to have been part of the, what did he call it, the battalion, Dublin battalion. And he went down there, and the man in charge was
in the forecourts. Ned Daly, yeah.
He went down, and Ned Daly then assigned him from there. They wanted to know from him what was happening, because they didn't really that his communication seems to have been kind of very poor. He was assigned then, posted at a barricade near the forecourts, that's what he said. And he said, I saw someplace there where he saw it, that was about 2 o'clock in the day. And then at 5 o'clock, it was moved on to another one that was near Jameson's distillery. And one of the things that kind of comes across, everything was very quiet because it was all happening down at the GPO. And then at 6:30 he himself and 2 more volunteered to put a barricade in Mary's Lane. He seems to have been around Church Street, from what I can... And they erected another barricade, and then one of these London Irish ex-British soldiers came along and kind of took it over. He was there from, I was figuring, he was there from Monday, at 2 o'clock on Monday, and this all until Thursday. And you see, nothing was happening in that direction. They were getting tired of the inactivity, and they were there at the barricade, and they were taking snatches of sleep in their turns, kind of thing. And then he went down to the corner of the market building, and a friend of his, Sean Byrne, was there as sentry. And Dad seems to have volunteered to give him a break because he'd been up all night, I would gather, and that he'd man it, and that's where he was wounded. He talks about an outburst of fire, and that there was an English soldier on the top of a roof that shot, and it hit the butt of his rifle, and I suppose it went through both his thighs and his stomach. Now that was Thursday evening. They brought him to St. Matthew's Hall, and they seem to have had a kind of a Red Cross set up there, and they kept him there until Saturday. And then on Saturday they brought him to 26 of them together, I suppose all the wounded. They brought him to the Richmond Hospital, and so he was in the Richmond then for 3 weeks. I suppose, and then after that there was the boss, as he used to call him, Con McCormack, came for him one day and brought him home to his place, and he was there for about a month, and he went back to his job again and back to the volunteers and the whole works again. Down at home in Drumcharlie, they didn't know what had happened to him. I remember him telling us that one time, and that the McKennas had been first cousins of my dad's. They were from Tulla, and some of those were in Cuimhneamh, and they're the ones. There was an Amy McKenna and an Effie McKenna. They'd be his own first cousin, and they're the ones that found him in the Richmond, and I suppose let the folks back in County Clare know that he was alive, and that he hadn't been shipped out like so many others.
They were in Dublin, these women.
They must have been in Dublin. And they were part of the Cuimhneamh. I suppose they were helping out or involved in it themselves. They'd have been older than Dad now, I'd say myself. And that he was in the hospital and that he'd been wounded, but that he was okay, kind of thing. And I suppose the fact that he was alive, number one, and number two, that he wasn't shipped out. That'd be a big part of it too. So then he came back on stream, and he seems to have kind of stayed there until August of 17. And back to his own job and back to the volunteers and kind of, I suppose, picking up the pieces after the 1916.
He came back to Tulla then.
He came back into Tulla. And he joined the East Clare Brigade.